Welcome to the Nourish to Thrive podcast, faith-forward, science-backed strategies for women who want more energy, less weight, and real answers. I'm your host, Tanya Pennington-Miller, a functional nutritional therapy practitioner and functional blood chemistry specialist with a master's degree in applied clinical nutrition. If you're tired of feeling dismissed by your doctor, confused by your labs, and stuck in survival mode, you're in the right place. Here, we simplify the science. We get to the root, and we anchor it all in truth, because God made your body to heal and thrive, not just survive. It just needs the right kind of support and less noise. Hello, my friend. Welcome into the Nourish to Thrive podcast. I'm so glad you're back with me today. So I had a question about cholesterol that was sent in by someone, and I touched on it in last week's Q&A episode. And so we are going to dive a lot deeper into that topic over the next few episodes, starting today. So she had just come from a doctor's appointment, and she generally eats well, she exercises, she's mindful of her health. So she came out of that appointment learning that her LDL cholesterol had gone up and that her doctor wanted to talk to her about starting a statin. And she was just very confused because she hadn't changed anything. She hadn't started eating any differently. She didn't stop moving her body. And yet her cholesterol is going up. And now there's a prescription on the table. And this is exactly what I want to dive deeper on in this series, because what is happening to cholesterol in our bodies in midlife is a conversation that deserves so much more than a quick prescription recommendation and a send-off. And here's the thing I want to be open with today, and it's going to reframe the entire conversation. Your body makes far more cholesterol than you could ever eat from food. About 75 to 80% of the cholesterol in your bloodstream was produced by your liver. Only about 20 to 25% actually comes from your diet. And your liver's not making all of that cholesterol by accident. It's making it because your body needs it. And when we understand what it needs it for, then the whole picture can change. So for the rest of August, we're going to do a 3-part series on cholesterol as it pertains to women in midlife. So today is the first of those episodes, and we're going to lay the foundation. So what cholesterol actually is, why your body makes it, what estrogen has to do with it, and why the conversation your doctor is probably having with you is missing some really critical pieces. So let me start off by saying this. Cholesterol is not the villain. In fact, cholesterol is a healer in your body. And I know that is not what we've been taught, but I want you to hold on to that throughout this entire series, because almost everything that tends to go wrong in the cholesterol conversation starts with the assumption that less cholesterol is always better. And that assumption is just not supported by the full picture. So here is something that I think really illustrates this. When there is inflammation in the body, particularly inflammation in the arterial walls, the liver is going to produce more cholesterol in response, because cholesterol is actually used to repair damaged tissue. So elevated cholesterol can be your body's way of saying something needs fixing. It's showing up to help. The standard narrative tends to blame cholesterol for being at the scene, when really it got called there because something needed repair. It's a bit like blaming the firefighters for being at the fire, right? It's like, you know what? Every time there's a fire, I see firefighters there. We must need to get rid of them. Well, no, because the fire would still be burning. And that's the same thing we're doing. When we take a statin, we're getting rid of the cholesterol, but the fire, which is the inflammation, is still burning. So cholesterol is a waxy, fat-like substance that your body uses for very specific, very deliberate purposes. And the fact that your liver is producing the vast majority of it is not a flaw in design. God very well knew what he was doing. It is the design working. Your liver produces more when it needs more and less when it has enough. It is a very tightly regulated system. And when that number on your lab report goes up, the better question is always, what is it that your body is responding to? Not, how do we get that marker down on my lab report? So let's talk about what cholesterol is doing in your body. It is essential for the structural integrity of every single cell membrane in your body. So think of cell membranes like walls, okay? And cholesterol is one of the key materials that keeps those walls from being either too rigid or too fluid. And without adequate cholesterol, cells cannot function properly. Every single cell. Your body uses cholesterol to produce bile acids, which are what your digestive system uses to break down dietary fat. Helps to break down, it emulsifies so that you can absorb the fat and utilize it as energy. So, if you are low in cholesterol, your ability to digest and absorb fat soluble vitamins, this is going to be your vitamin D, your vitamin K, vitamin A, and your vitamin E, can all be compromised. And then there's a piece that I think is really important for women who are in this audience specifically. Cholesterol is the raw material for all of your hormones: cortisol, DHEA, estrogen, progesterone, testosterone. Every single one of them starts with cholesterol. Your body takes cholesterol and converts it step by step into the hormones that regulate your mood, your metabolism, your sleep, your stress response, your sex drive, and your reproductive health. And that's not a side note, like that is the central point. So when someone suggests suppressing cholesterol production with a statin in a woman who is already in perimenopause and already navigating declining hormone levels, whether you are in perimenopause already or maybe you've already made it to menopause, that's a conversation that deserves a much, much deeper look. Because the very molecule that we are talking about suppressing is the raw material that your body is using to produce what little estrogen and progesterone is still available. And I want to be fair here. There are situations where a statin makes clinical sense. I'm not making, this blanket statement against all statin use. Okay. But for women in perimenopause specifically, and for women who have not had a heart attack or a cardiovascular event, meaning women who are in what's called primary prevention, the evidence for statins is genuinely very weak. Most of the landmark statin research was conducted on middle-aged men. The data does not translate to women the way that it has been applied to us. And for women in primary prevention, the case for a statin is just not as strong as it's often presented. And the side effects, muscle pain, fatigue, cognitive issues, and the depletion of CoQ10, which is critical for mitochondrial energy production, are very real and deserve to be a part of the conversation before anyone gets started on a prescription. Now, let's talk about why LDL specifically tends to rise in perimenopause, because this is very common. Estrogen plays a really important role in how your body manages cholesterol. So specifically, estrogen signals your liver to produce something called LDL receptors. And these receptors, you can think of them like little docking stations. They sit on the surface of your liver cells, and their job is to pull LDL out of your bloodstream and bring it into the liver to be broken down and recycled. So when estrogen is in a healthy range, your liver is actively and efficiently clearing LDL from circulation. And that's a very good thing. Now, as estrogen declines in perimenopause and menopause, and it typically does so gradually and then more significantly over time, the liver gets that signal less. So fewer LDL receptors are produced, less LDL is being pulled out of circulation, and the levels in your blood start to rise. So our body did not all of a sudden start producing more cholesterol. We didn't necessarily change the way we're eating, but the clearance mechanism has slowed down due to a hormonal shift. And when many women see this on their labs, I think that that's just natural to start questioning your diet, right? You cut out the eggs, stop eating red meat, switch to low-fat everything. And all of this is very supported by their doctor. And then they're confused when the numbers don't come down the way they expected because they're solving for the wrong problem. The driver is hormonal, and the diet is not the primary lever. Now, let's talk about stress because it wouldn't be fair if we didn't. Because cortisol has its own relationship with your cholesterol. We've talked throughout this year about something called the pregnenolone steal. The idea that when your body is under chronic stress, it prioritizes cortisol production. And because cortisol and your sex hormones are all made from the same precursor, pregnenolone, cortisol wins and your estrogen and progesterone lose. You've heard me say this before in the context of exercise and recovery. But here's what I have not said yet. The pregnenolone steal is happening at the cholesterol level. Because remember, cholesterol is the raw material that comes before pregnenolone. So the pathway is cholesterol gets converted to pregnenolone, and then pregnenolone either goes toward cortisol or your sex hormones. And when chronic stress is present, the body is consuming cholesterol faster to fuel the stress response. Your liver sees that demand and responds the way it always does by producing more. So your cholesterol goes up. And again, it's not because of your diet. It's not only because of declining estrogen, it's also because your stress load is driving a higher rate of cholesterol consumption and your liver's trying to keep up. And then here's the compounding problem. All of that cholesterol going toward cortisol is cholesterol that is not going toward estrogen and progesterone. So chronic stress is simultaneously driving up your cholesterol numbers and driving down the very hormones that help your liver clear cholesterol. It's a cycle that gets harder to break the longer it goes on. And it's one that a statin does absolutely nothing to address. So when we're talking about what is driving your cholesterol up in midlife, we're really talking about three things working together: declining estrogen, reducing LDL clearance; chronic stress, consuming cholesterol for cortisol production; and the liver doing exactly what it's supposed to do by producing more to meet demand. And none of those three things has anything to do with how many eggs you ate this week. And actually, since I just mentioned eggs, I want to say something here. For the vast majority of people, eating cholesterol does not meaningfully raise your blood cholesterol. Your liver runs a feedback loop. When you eat more dietary cholesterol, your liver senses that. And so it produces less of its own. However, when you eat less cholesterol, your liver also senses that, and it starts to produce more to compensate. It's self-regulating. So when you cut out eggs in an effort to lower your LDL, your liver is often compensating by making more of its own. The dietary lever is far smaller than most people have been led to believe. Dietary choices do matter for the cholesterol picture, but not through dietary cholesterol itself. It's through the quality of fats that you eat, the fiber that you consume, and the inflammatory load of your overall diet. And we're going to get into all of that in the final episode of this series. But cutting healthy, whole food sources of fat and cholesterol out of an already good diet is usually not the right move. And it almost certainly is not going to move the numbers the way that your doctor is hoping. So here's what I want you to walk away from today understanding. Rising LDL in perimenopause and menopause is very often a hormonal story, and it's not automatically a cardiovascular risk story. The context matters enormously. If your LDL is rising, but your triglycerides are low, your HDL is good, your fasting insulin is well optimized, and your inflammatory markers are clean, your high sensitivity C-reactive protein, that's a very different picture from someone whose LDL is rising in the context of metabolic dysfunction, okay? Insulin resistance, chronic inflammation. Those two women should not be getting the same recommendation from their doctor. And here's something that really gets missed in the standard cholesterol conversation. Total LDL is just a count. Think of it as being told how many cars are on the highway without knowing anything about those cars, the size, the speed, who's driving them. And the number gives you something, but it doesn't give you nearly enough to make good clinical decisions. So next week, we're going to go deep on the markers that actually will give you the full picture, including particle size, particle number, ApoB, a marker that is genetically predisposed, and a few others that most standard panels are not going to include. So what do I want you to do with all of this right now? First, if cholesterol has come up in a doctor's appointment, or if you have been watching your own numbers shift, I want you to push for a more complete picture before making any decisions. Ask about ApoB. Ask about an NMR lipid profile. Ask what your triglycerides and fasting insulin are, because those tell about your metabolic environment in a way that LDL just cannot. Okay, we're going to go through all of those very specifically next week. So hang on to all of that. Second, I want you to think about what supporting your hormonal environment actually looks like, because if estrogen decline is driving the clearance issue, then the most upstream thing you can do is support the conditions that allow your body to maintain hormone production as well as possible for as long as possible. That means adequate sleep, adequate dietary fat and protein, managing your stress load and cortisol, and reducing the inflammatory burden that your body is carrying. These are the foundation that every other conversation sits on. And if you want to support your hormonal environment while you're working on the foundational pieces, the Feminescence Pro line is something I always recommend. We talked about it back in episode 54. That was our actually last Q&A episode. And it fits here too, because when estrogen is better supported, your liver's ability to clear LDL is also better supported. So it's not a cholesterol supplement, but it supports the hormonal environment that governs cholesterol clearance. And that connection is very real. I will link to it again in the show notes of this episode. And when you click on the link, you're going to notice that there are 3 versions there, and you want to make sure you choose the right one. So Feminescence Pro Harmony is for women who are still cycling and not yet in perimenopause. Feminescence Pro Peri is for women who are in perimenopause. And Feminescence Pro Post is for women who are postmenopausal, meaning you have not had a period in a year or more. And if you're not sure which one is right for you, just reach out to me on Instagram at tanya.pennington.miller, and I can help you figure that out. I personally use the Feminescence Pro Peri, okay? I am still cycling, but I'm perimenopausal. So I understand that can get a little bit confusing, so I'm happy to help there. I want to close today with Romans 12:2, which says, "Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind." There is a pattern in the world when it comes to cholesterol, and that pattern is the number went up, it is bad. Here is a prescription. So many women are conforming to that pattern, just trusting their doctors without ever asking what that number actually means, without asking what is actually driving it, or whether the solution being offered makes sense for their particular body in their particular season. The renewing of the mind looks like asking better questions. It looks like understanding the mechanism rather than just responding to the metric. It looks like recognizing that your body is not making cholesterol by accident, that it is making it because it needs it, and that the body God designed is operating with more intelligence and intention than a single number on a lab report can capture. So I want to encourage you to keep renewing your mind through this series, because the more you understand what is actually happening, the better equipped you are to advocate for yourself and to make decisions that actually honor how your body was designed. So I hope you enjoyed today's episode. This is the first episode in this series. So next week, we're going to go deep on the markers that I actually want you paying more attention to than a basic LDL number. We're talking LDL particle size and number, ApoB, NMR, triglycerides, HDL, fasting insulin, inflammatory markers, LP little a, and what it looks like to read those at optimal ranges rather than just reference ranges. If you have labs sitting in front of you, bring them with you to next week's episode and have them in front of you. And that's going to be really beneficial as we go through some of the markers and talk about them. And if this series is making you think seriously about what the root cause picture in your own body looks like, including how your DNA shapes your response to cholesterol, to hormones, and metabolic health, that is the work we do inside my DNA Reset for Fat Loss Academy. The link to the waitlist is in the show notes. Enrollment does not open again until early 2027, but being on that list gets you information in the meantime. So thank you so much for spending time with me today, and I will see you right back here next week, sister. That's it for today on the Nourish to Thrive podcast. If you found value here, I'd love for you to subscribe, leave a review, or send it to someone who's walking a similar path. Keep showing up, keep asking questions, and know that healing is possible, especially when you trust the one who designed your body to heal. Until next time, stay rooted in truth and nourished in grace.